I'm Patrick Henningsen. Some of you might have seen me on Russia Today. I'm a Middle East analyst for Russia Today, and I used to work with Infowars.com. And recently I've left that job to start 21st Century Wire, and we have been doing a show on Sky TV as well, on Paradimn Shift TV. So on Thursdays at 6. Information we're talking about today, but it's delivered in a kind of a slick, mainstream way, because I'm targeting people who are sitting on the fence. Because I know a lot of you here are kind of really awake to what's going on in the world, and it's great that you're here. But I bet you've got a lot of friends who kind of know something's up, but they're kind of afraid to talk about it with their work colleagues or their family members for a fear of being ridiculed. So I know exactly what that's like. So that's kind of why we made 21st Century Wire, to give something that you could hand to somebody and say, actually, it is about presentation in many ways. And they can say, actually, that sounds kind of plausible. I'm going to look into that. And that's kind of what we've done. So our website is a good point for reporters and anybody who's got a story. A lot of people are sending stuff in, as is the UK column, who I'm doing work for with Brian and Mike in Plymouth as well. So I'm going to get into a few bits of, let's see, news for the waking generation. Basically, this generation, and when I'm talking about generation, I'm not talking about how old you are. I'm talking about us sitting at this point in time in history. There's a lot of stuff going on right now, and it's kind of happening in your face. So it's a bit like the 60s. If you can remember it, it means that you weren't there. And I think in the same case, 2012, if you're not seeing it happening all around you, then you're really missing out on a lot. And I know a lot of people here are aware of what's going on. But you got to kind of communicate that with your friends and colleagues, that this is a different paradigm, a different generation. You've seen this image before. This is an image we use a lot, and I think these days it's not so much about taking either the red or the blue. I think we have to take a couple of each on a daily basis. That's the world we're living in. But information is power, okay? We wouldn't be here today if it probably wasn't for the internet. And I can probably say I wouldn't have met all the people that I've met, that I'm working with, if it wasn't for the internet. Wouldn't have been on a TV show, which I did on Friday, if it wasn't for the internet. So everything really is because of information, the openness and the freedom of information. It's really important that everybody keeps an eye on that ball, because it might not be free forever. And there might be legislation, or there might be government policy that's going to restrict the freedom online. Freedom to publish, freedom to post a comment, an opinion. It's very important we protect that, because once you lose that, you're back to the Stone Ages, basically, where you have 3 media networks that control everything that comes out to you. So think about how much we know today that we didn't know 30 years ago. And we can chalk a lot of that up to the information superhighway, the web, the internet, whatever you want to call it. And I know this sounds like a basic thing, but it's really something that we need to, it's one of those things you need to keep in a very strong box in the corner of your mind, and just always be aware that it's there, and that if anything is challenging that, we need to run quickly to defend that right. More than anything, I believe, because without that, you're into a very small cartel to control free speech, who control the media, who control ideas. And I'm going to get to that psychology in a minute, because it's about controlling reality. The mainstream would like to get you into a very narrow band of reality. And a lot of people live their lives in that narrow band. But the alternative media, is the band is this wide in comparison. And I'd rather be living in that one and have the freedom to choose the information that I want to see and learn about and research than to live in this one, which is a very small pipeline. But there's some people that are very successful within that narrow band. If you work for the BBC, if you work for ITV, Channel 4, obviously we send lots of stuff to them, and I've never seen any of it published. But actually, our viewer numbers on the aggregate. If you look at least with InfoWars, when I was working with them, on the aggregate, we're way past CNN on a domestic level in the United States, if you count radio, podcast, image impressions online, internet TV, syndication, more than CNN on a domestic level. So that shows you the power of the alternative media. And this website I designed in 2009, didn't do much with it until recently, and it shot up like a rocket in the last 3 months. And I did it all for free, and I'm going to show you how to do that with no money at the end of the presentation. So, conspiracy without theory. If you're so buying into having an open mind and learning a little bit more about what's going on around the world, you're going to get attacked by people who are saying, you're a conspiracy theorist. And this is all psychology. So if you want to win that attack, you have to come up with slogans like this and ideas like this, because they're very powerful. Someone came up to me the other day and kind of attacked me about an article I wrote about the World Trade Center or Federal Reserve bombing they just foiled in New York a couple of days ago, where the FBI set up a Bangladeshi student who was 21 years old, gave him the bomb, trained him, took him there, and then, of course, it didn't have any explosives in it, and then they celebrated that they made a terror bust. So they said, well, Patrick, you're really good at making a theory sound like fact. And I said, it's not a theory. I'm giving you my opinion based on history, that the FBI have done that many times. So have governments all over the world throughout history. So, yeah, false flag attacks. So based on history and my opinion, I put those things together, and I'm making an assumption that's an educated assumption. So it's not a theory. It's my response to someone who says that is prove that I'm wrong. Can you prove that my theory or my assumption is wrong? And normally they back off at that point, because you want it to be on an educated debate level, which not throwing ad hominem sort of, non sequitur, non-critical aspersions at you. Keep it on a debate. My case against your case. And that's the way it should be in a civilized society. Unfortunately, it's not always civil, but we're working on it. Reconfiguring your reality. Once you wake up, or once your friends wake up, that's really what happens, is your reality gets shaken a little bit, like sand in a glass. Eventually that sand settles, and you can see the separation of water and sand. It's the same thing when you get a barrage of information. You don't know what to do with it. I tell people you go through a couple of phases. The first phase is shock, then you get depressed, then paranoid, and then eventually you settle down. And it does take time. I went through those stages. But the most important thing is you can't worry about what people think about you. Because if you're worrying about what people think about what you say, then you really can't really say anything that's really interesting. So you got to get rid of that one. You got to shed that worrying about what people think about you. Now, John alluded to this in the last presentation. No, we didn't talk before and coordinate our presentations. We had the same idea. It's funny how the ether works. But the apocalypse is translated in Greek or Aramaic, I'm not sure, it means the unveiling. And this is a really powerful thing, because that theme of apocalypse is in every Hollywood movie, every science fiction TV show. I mean, it's just endless. They're throwing that at you. They're taking a word that has a different meaning, but they're throwing the end of the world, prophecy, doom. That's what they're throwing at you. That's a psychology job. It really means unveiling. And so now take this word apocalypse and look at it in a totally different way. And many things will be unveiled and are in the process of being unveiled right now. One of them is media and information. They're selling you a version of reality. This is no different than when you're at home and there's a telesalesperson calling you, trying to sell you a timeshare in Spain. Okay, and that's happened to a lot of people. A salesperson is selling you something, but you have to buy it. Every sales pitch needs a buyer to be a successful sales pitch. So that is your choice. It's up to you to decide whether you're going to buy that version of reality that's being pushed out, shoved down your throat by any of the mainstream media networks, newspapers, basic consensus reality coming out of government talking heads. That's a version of reality. It doesn't mean it's real. Just because 80% of the people are in agreement with an idea doesn't make it real. That's called consensus reality. This is something different. People are starting to see through this now. Very exciting time. We're seeing more and more of it every day. Money and finance, that was covered in the previous talk. Fantastic. Very in-depth. And you know what? When I went to some of the WTO protests, like anti-capitalist protests in 1999, 2000, anti-war marches, 2002, 2003, very few people knew about fractional reserve banking or the Federal Reserve, or knew that the Bank of England was, loaning money to the government at compound interest. Things like that, not many people were talking about. Now, I went to the Occupy camp this year, and quite a few people, I saw quite a few posters about the banking system. So there's a lot of people actually seeing the target, and that is the target, because that's the core, that's the thing, that's the engine of tyranny, really, is the debt-based money system, fractional reserve lending, that gets people to go out and get themselves in debt. And of course, society becomes indebted at that point. So a lot of people are awake to this. That's part of the apocalypse, that the veil is being taken off that system, and that's a big one of the biggest. And also, with everything with finance, the current system, profits are kept for the private corporation, the losses are made public. You'll see that pattern over and over and over. That's the bailout culture. It's all, there's so many examples of this right now. You can look at the banking bailouts. This is also down to every single industry. Pretty soon, the Times, the Mirror, the Sun, they'll all be asking for bailouts because they're going bankrupt because they can't sell advertising enough to pay for their giant operation because nobody's reading it. Everyone's going online to get their information. So they'll be asking for a bailout soon. This will be the mainstream media bailout. I'll give it 2 or 3 years or less. False flags. This is a subject I know a lot about because I've researched it a lot. And this is the most important one. If you don't know about Gladio, go read about it. There's some really good films online. Because we all know about 9/11, 7/7. I can't tell you exactly how it was done and who did it. I have my theories. But I can tell you that the official explanation is a joke in terms of logic or critical thinking. And it wouldn't stand up in a court of law if it was a trial. So if it doesn't stand up in our own courts forensically or even on a circumstantial basis, it has no value whatsoever. But Gladio is something really interesting because we're starting to see this sort of thing coming back. During the 70s and 80s, there was a NATO-sponsored subversive kind of operation going on that crossed over between some of the far right-wing groups, especially in places like Italy, but this was also happening in France, Belgium, and Greece and other countries, where they would infiltrate some of these hard right nationalist groups, for instance, Red Brigades, and in association with other organizations, and they bomb things like the Bologna bombing, which everybody thought was a terrorist bombing for years, until declassified information and good investigations turned out it was a joint CIA, NATO, and of course every European government would be involved in that if it was NATO, any of the NATO states. And a lot of people died, and what it did was it created an arc of conflict within society. And normally when the economy's tanking, it's when you see more of this sort of stuff going on. You see the emergence of far-right nationalist groups. We've seen this in Greece recently, no surprise. And of course what comes with this is sometimes violence And sometimes there's state-sponsored violence because there's a long-term agenda that you and I might not know what it is. But certainly we might not know what the agenda is in the dark rooms of central planning, but we can see the fruits, the rotten fruits in most cases, of these agendas happening all around us. This is also the case, I'll get into the Middle East in a minute, but they just set off a bomb in Lebanon yesterday, and the talking points came out immediately that Syria was responsible. Of course, that's not the case, but it's the same talking point when they assassinated Rafiq Hariri in 2005 in Beirut. Syria's responsible. So they keep the meme going, and this creates the kind of boogeyman on the geopolitical scale. I'll get to that a little bit later. Secret societies, the unveiling of secret societies. Who knew? I mean, my friend's children, 12 years old, he's telling me about the Freemasonry and the Illuminatis the other day. Little kid from Brixton. And when I was 12 years old, I can't say I knew anything about this subject. When I was 20, I knew nothing about this subject. When I was 30, I knew a little bit. When I was 35, I knew a bit. And now maybe I know a little bit about it. And the kids now, they know all about it. So this is definitely out of the closet, if you will. Freemasonry, there's lots of groups I can put on here. The Bilderberg group, which I would say keep an eye on, because you can see from the coverage of Bilderberg that's being done by some excellent investigative reporters. You can see the upcoming agenda for the year, maybe the next 2 or 3 years. This is some of our own elected politicians going to these secret meetings under their official capacity, which is technically, it's unconstitutional for one, and it's illegal on the other hand. Only today in Hyde Park, there was a big rally, this anti-austerity rally. And who was the keynote speaker? It was Ed Miliband. So there he was on stage in Hyde Park, 100,000 people, socialist workers and everybody, unions and this and that. And he starts speaking, and he's a Bilderberger, or at least I believe his brother has attended, possibly he has. And he's giving this speech up there, and you can hear a chorus of boos coming from one side. And then he's delivering the speech. And what you have to realize, Ed Miliband is just, he's representing Man United and David Cameron's Man City. Okay, they're in the same league. But he's saying, I'm labor, so I'm going to posture here with the labor unions and try to get a little bit of credibility. And a lot of people are waking up to the fact that there's no difference between these two, because that agenda, that government agenda, is rammed through. Doesn't matter which party is in power, and we've seen that definitely in this country. I've been here for the good part of 20 years, and I've seen a massive change in society, the structure of government, privatization, economic changes, social changes, and there's an agenda running through. It doesn't matter who's Home Secretary, it doesn't matter who's Prime Minister or who's in power. This two-party, this fixed, the left-right paradigm is another unveiling. People are seeing through the left-right illusion, okay? And they realize, it's like Bernie Ecclestone doesn't care if Michael Schumacher wins Formula One or Damon Hill or whoever, as long as the stadiums are full, as long as they're buying the jerseys or the kits, they're booking their tickets to see Formula One, Ecclestone doesn't care who wins. So we have to ask ourselves, who owns the league? And of course, a lot of us are waking up to that realization. We know who owns the league. So something to keep out. Committee of 30, by the way. This is another one I just found out this week. They meet at Claridge's Hotel this third Thursday of every month. And this is the top guys from advertising, broadcasting, graphic design, the big names. A lot of them have titles in front of their names because they've done such good work. The Queen's tapped them on the shoulder twice. But the Committee of 30 meets, this is a typical, it's not a secret society, but it's not a public society. It's like a little club. They meet and have dinner and they discuss things like Bilderberg. Just get together for the weekend, plan a little bit for the next year. Make sure everybody's on message. This one, functions, common purpose. And Brian Garish probably has done as much work on this subject as anybody. He'll talk a little bit about them, or a lot, I'm not sure, in the next speech. But Common Purpose functions like a secret society, because if you're a member of Common Purpose, you don't have to declare your membership in public. So where are they? They're everywhere. In all municipalities, organizations, government agencies, who knows? Judiciary, police, education, teachers, head teachers. We don't know, because they don't have to declare their membership. But that is being unveiled slowly, and that's not going to be good news if you have a secret organization. Pedophilia, ugly subject, especially in the last couple of weeks. Not nice, but this is another secret activity, a secret pastime. People in positions of power and influence use something like this to... It's the glue that makes the system work, in other words. But more than anything, and I think we need to... It's good that this has come out with the BBC, but the next thing is, what's society going to do about it? And what you're looking at here is a systematic, individual, and social disease that afflicts, a fifth of the population of this country. So there could be a need for maybe some accountability initially, but then there's got to be some truth and reconciliation as a society, almost like South Africa had years ago and apartheid finished, because otherwise we're going to have a massive amount of court activity and litigation that will last for 100 years. But the problem needs to be addressed very quickly, because it's affecting too many people, but it's not secret. It's still secret, but it's becoming less secret, and that's good news overall for society. Secret genocides. Patrick Lynch talked about chemtrails earlier. This is one of the examples of the secret genocides that have been going on for years that aren't so secret anymore. It's like the old Victorian rings with a bit of poison on it that slowly kills somebody. This is the modern equivalent, is what we have. Fluoride in the water, chemtrails, Deepwater Horizon. A lot of evidence suggests that I've seen that was a planned event, okay? Dispersants put in the ecosystem, killed everything in the Gulf. Depleted uranium is one of the first things that's one of the things that really got my eyes open about 10 years ago to become doing what I'm doing today, was because of what was happening in the first Gulf War, second Gulf War, and seeing some of the effects of that afterwards that wasn't really well publicized at the time. GMOs, I don't need to say too much about that. The pharmaceutical industry, Monsanto, this is what we call the chemical and pharmaceutical industrial complex. It's like the military industrial complex. It just steamrolls markets and can steamroll you in court if you want to challenge it. You want to sue Monsanto, you can go ahead and try, but you'll have 100 lawyers there against you, and they will fight you until you run out of money. So we have to employ more creative ways of fighting a beast of this magnitude. And there's a lot of good ideas that have come out today, and there's loads of stuff out there that's already happening now. But the most important thing is probably to disengage from the products that they're selling. Just move back. That's what I've done with the financial system. I used to have 6 credit cards at one point, and it just got too much. And now I think for 5 years I've had no credit cards. Haven't taken out any loans. Budgets have been a bit tighter as a result, because I was used to living on tomorrow's payback date to buy things like airline tickets and rent cars. But I found a way to manage it. It took a while. It took about 2 or 3 years. Disengage from the financial system. Disengage from the GMO industry. That's tough, because it's everywhere. You have to really work hard to find the products that you can use, that you're happy with using, but it's a worthwhile activity. Okay. Science and technology. The main amazing thing in the 21st century is the technology we have. It's incredible. We've got everything. We've got the Wi-Fi, we've got this, we've got that. We've got our satellites, we've got smart technology. But how much technology has been developed in the last 100 years, 200 years, that hasn't seen the light of day. Okay, this is the tip of the iceberg that we're seeing, right now. My engineering professor at university, this was 20 years ago, Ken Brown, amazing guy. He told me a story about one of his colleagues at the University of California that developed a combustion engine. I was 21 at the time. He developed a combustion engine in 1962 that got over 100 miles to the gallon, okay, 1962. And there's many examples of this. If you go and you do a little bit of research, you see about 20 of these. Ford, 1.5 million in 1962 is a lot of money. That would be, I don't know what the equivalent would be today. Bought it, shelved it, okay? And that's what's been happening time and time again. So there's, ditto with science, there's a lot more known about the universe, about physics, about science than Maxwell's mathematical and Einstein's mathematical solutions to relativity or physics. There's a lot more that's coming out by the day. Today in the Independent, front page, fuel made from air. Has anybody seen that story today? Incredible. There's so much of this. That was the front page of the Independent, by the way. It wasn't in the New Scientist. So there's loads of stuff coming. Kesh, MT Kesh, is a guy we're trying to interview at the moment in Belgium, who's managed to consolidate or mimic the gravitational model in a Coke bottle. Okay, the ramifications of this are massive, from free energy to health. Can zip an atom up, or unzip the atom, take the energy out, and zip it back up again without splitting it with radiation. Okay, you can't tell me, with the amount of technological advances that we've had in the last 100 years, that so much more is not possible. But there's a thing called planned obsolescence, and people are starting to become wise to it. And there's loads of free energy solutions right now. You can build your own some free energy kind of beta models to do things. There's so much out there. So that veil has been lifted, and when that genie is out of the bottle, that's it. And Kesh is from Iran, funny enough, and he invited all the governments of the world to view his technology. He wanted to give it away. Obviously, he's got the patent for this, and nobody showed up to the global conference. Only one country showed up, Iran, in 2008. So we're investigating now how far Iran has got with the Kesh technology. So that could be one of the reasons why maybe Iran's being targeted. It could be a theory, but what I'm saying is there's a lot of interesting stuff going on out there, and you have to keep an open mind. Some of it's true, some of it might not be. But we've checked this guy out, and very interesting stuff. From a scientific standpoint, it's very credible. As far as applications go, we're not sure. The writings on the wall. You ever hear this? We hear this saying all the time, the writings on the wall. This comes from the Bible, I think, where they used to, in the old Jerusalem or whatever, used to write some stuff on the wall of something that they wanted to say or out but couldn't do person to person. The writings on the wall, and sometimes it's a bit of foreboding. Well, we've got our wall today, which is the Facebook wall. That's one of the walls where the writing is on. It's massive. Okay, the amount of stuff posted on a daily basis. And I know that you're being watched on Facebook, and you might say it's a data collection operation. This is true to an extent, but I'll tell you something. They don't have enough people to analyze all that data. So the amount of eyeballs that are watching Facebook, that are readers, that are looking and getting information and taking things of value off it, is far in excess, in my estimation, than the amount of clandestine spying that's going on. Okay, they don't have enough people and enough warehouses to analyze that data. They can only flag up certain things at certain times, and it's a little bit random. But overall, people have really taken the ball and run with it as far as social networking and stuff like that. And that's one of the reasons why a meeting like this, Jane's advertised it, and you can do a meeting and people will show up, and it's fantastic. So that's, you can fear technology, but on the other hand, it depends how you look at it. You do need to be skeptical about social networks and Google and people like that, but you also need to look at the opportunity that's there in front of you right there and run with it, because it might not be so easy in the future. I traveled. I've lived and worked in the U.S. I've lived and worked in Europe. I've lived and worked in the Middle East. I've lived and worked in Saudi Arabia, even, which is a very extreme one. And you know what I found from all my travels is the exact opposite of what I see in the media. 99% of people I met are not portrayed when I go to visit the place. It's not what I thought it would be. Even when I was a kid, when we moved from Boston to California, I had these visions of people roller skating on the beach, and there was no beaches where we lived in California. It was a little bit of a disappointment for a 14-year-old. But that was my first lesson, is all is not what it appears. And people, there are not hundreds of jihadists running around the Middle East. It's just not happening. And from my experience in research and really analyzing news stories over the last 8 years, I've seen that the idea of the Islamic fundamentalist, where are the Islamic fundamentalists? Where are the real Al-Qaeda? They don't exist, is the answer. They don't exist. They don't exist in this country. They don't exist in America. And in the Middle East, they don't exist. I'm talking about an authentic Islamic extremist jihadist. You might get a few mentally unstable, confused 19, 18-year-olds who smoke too much skunk and who are confused about, what culture they're in or their religion or what their parents want them to be in an arranged marriage, and they're freaking out. And so they might run to some weird cell, but that cell is almost always controlled and run by somebody above that who's handling that, who is then connected to a Western intelligence agency or an Israeli intelligence agency or whatever. Okay, there's no real Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda was created in Afghanistan in the late 70s and early 80s. That's a historical fact. They were called the Mujahideen, and that database of mercenaries, basically, next generations come through, next generation. They're training them in Libya, they're sending them to Syria. That's a fact. That's been reported many, many times. But when a bomb goes off, like it did in New York 2 days ago, the media said, oh, he's working, he's all the hallmarks of Al-Qaeda. It looks like an Al-Qaeda bomb plot. The FBI trained the guy, brought him there, held his hand, pulled the fuse. There is no Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is it's a creation, okay? Majority of humans and Arabs and Muslims don't have any interest in war, conflict. There's no clash of civilizations. The only reason there is a clash of civilizations is because it's been imposed upon us. The only reason there's a Shiite versus Sunni sectarian issue is because it was created, especially in Iraq in 2003, 4, 5. We were involved in provocateuring, bombing mosques. That was reported by Robert Fisk, some mainstream guys. It's not just me saying that. You can look it up if you have the time. It doesn't exist. Most people, their natural state, peaceful, playful. Everyone wants their kids to grow up, get an education, get married, get a nice job, maybe buy a house. That's the same in this country. It's the same in Lebanon. It's the same in Syria. It's the same in Libya. Of course, there's a few bad apples, and they'll usually spoil the bucket. That's the problem we have. This is the big one. For me, divide and rule. This is a psychological thing. This works both ways as well. I'm going to show you some images that have to do with divide and rule. But it works on we live in a holographic reality. So everything on a local level is usually reflected in the whole. So, we're losing our local communities through government agencies and subdivisions and privatizations and secret agendas. Same thing's happening on a global level. Okay, local governments are corrupt, national governments are corrupt. Okay, our leaders play people off against each other, political parties, tribes, interest groups, make you fight each other for the scraps left on the table. And they will play us off against each other. We've seen that in the truth movement, the alternative media, whatever you want to call it. A massive amount of infighting, people ripping each other to pieces because they don't agree with 1% or one word that they said about common law or something like that. In reality, everybody's on the same mission. So it doesn't make any sense to, try to take your colleague out below the knees for one little small thing. The most important thing is the information, the intention. People want to be free. They want to live better lives. They don't want to be scammed all the time. That's what everyone has in common. It's important that you remember that in the future going forward. I disagree with some big personalities in the alternative media on some stuff, but I'm not going to slag them off because I disagree with them about a couple of things. I'll still support them because I know in the core they're working against an establishment is not giving a good deal. And I agree with that. And although we might disagree on a few things, the core we agree on. So I'm not going to attack somebody. If someone keeps giving you a hard time about this, that, and the other, you just have to ignore them. You have all the tools to be informed, and you have no excuse not to move forward yourself. I'll show you how to do that at the very end. Divide and rule. You've seen this one before. There's 19 Arab hijackers. And I think a few of them were alive. They turned out to be alive afterwards. I think 7 of the 19 were actually alive. Yeah, and quite a few people, they rounded up quite a few of the guys that were alive afterwards. Anyway, 9/11, nice fairy tale, great Hollywood plot. In reality, it doesn't really add up to much, but it had a massive effect. It managed to implement a police security state that's global in nature, and it's heavy, and it's a very hard thing to deconstruct right now because society allowed it to go a little bit too far, too fast, and that was done by fear, and that's divide and rule. 7/7. This is the memorial in Hyde Park. Very sad event, very tragic event, and one of the most sloppy black ops in history. If you did a top 10 bloopers of false flags, I think 7/7 would probably be number one. It was so bad. Okay, most of the country believed that 4 Arab hijackers from Leeds drove down to Luton Station and went off and set off suicide bombs. That's what the majority of this country believe. Of course, if you've read anything deeply on this, you've seen the work of, Nick Collerstrom, Tony Farrell, Ripple Effect. It's an idiot's guide to 7/7, basically. It's but very sad. And what did it do? It continued the false narrative that there are Islamic extremists hiding among us. Even in the Muslim community, some people buy it, that there's terror cells here and there. I feel sorry for the 4 guys that died that day. We don't even know how they actually died, which is sad. Here's another character. This was Mubarak, Egypt, and Arab Spring came. He's the bad guy. He's the boogeyman. He was an establishment. He was one of their best employees. And they decided, for whatever reason, to close the book on him. They wanted to get something else in. So his time was up. Maybe he took too much out of the kitty. I don't know. But then came the Muslim Brotherhood. It's important that when you watch the news, the way the BBC covered it was, Mubarak's out, but who's going to win the next election? I knew who was going to win the next election. I went on Russia Today and I said who was going to win the next election a month before. You can check it online. I said the Muslim Brotherhood will win because they just met with the IMF back in April to agree on a debt schedule for Egypt. So I think that's what this was about. It's about international finance. It's about economic colonization. But they use that Muslim Brotherhood Islamic card to get society divided, to get people thinking. It's a cartoon play that goes on the surface. And the real story is underneath. And it has to do with finance and banking and neoliberal economics and privatization and so forth. That's what was happening in Egypt. Friends of Syria. This is probably, if you had to get a wicked witch, this is really the best example of a modern day wicked witch I've ever seen. William Hague and Hillary Clinton have been really doing what would be akin to war crimes in open and getting patted on the back by their own governments for it. They're organizing a non-governmental meeting, funding and arming, giving logistical support to terrorist groups to overthrow a government. They did the same thing in Libya. Okay? Whether you like Colonel Gaddafi or you like Assad, doesn't matter. It's a sovereign state. When you take those rules away that are in the Geneva Conventions or that the UN is supposed to be espousing, you have total international anarchy and rule by thuggery. That's kind of what we're left with right now. And that's because our mainstream media and our elected politicians are complicit in this story. That's why they didn't really do anything about it. But the truth came out in the end. This is the President of the U.S. He's a great guy. He's a fun-loving guy. He looks like Will Smith, or he did before 4 years of U.S. president, made him gray. But the truth is now you can see the record. And it's the same in this country. It doesn't matter if it's Democrat or Republican. Everyone's banging on about asking me, what do you think about the debates? What are Romney, Obama? And it doesn't matter. The agenda will continue, and it will be in a different style, but the actual core agenda will just continue to be rammed through. They will shove it right down your throats. As soon as that election's over, whoever wins, right next to Israel. Guarantee it. Within 2 months, they're all backed off because the focus in opinion polls say Americans do not interested in another war with Iran. But when the election's over, back on the agenda. So it's a Punch and Judy show. There's your demons. So we've had 3 major demons. We can add a few more to this list. The next Hitler. The next Hitler, Assad, the next Hitler. This was, an avatar. That's all it is. It's a media avatar. It's not real. Osama bin Laden, what you people think they know about him, is only derived from a very narrow pipeline of information. Okay, my research tells me that he was a CIA informant. He was financier for the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, and he was very close to his family's very close with the Bushes for years. So, but they still use, Obama even was, grandstanding after he apparently killed this guy. And Russia Today called me on May 1st, my birthday, and said, bin Laden's been killed. We need you to come on and talk about it. And so I was like, oh, this is interesting. So I went online. I just woke up. I didn't really hear what happened. So I did a little research, and I was, oh, this is interesting. They've killed him, and they've dumped his body at sea in about 24 hours. No evidence. They said it was because of Islamic traditions or something. So I went on Russia Today, and the presenter, Matt Trezza, who's an amazing guy, I'm on an ear feed in London, and they're in Moscow, and he says, Patrick, what do you think? Are they going to release any photos or videos of bin Laden? And I said, and I said this 4 days before Obama announced his answer to this question. I said, you know what? I don't think there's going to be any photos or videos released. And he said, well, how do you know that? I said, because he's been dead for 8 years or 9 years. And I named off all the official accounts right there and the years when they happened. And I said, this guy is dead. The only thing that's kept him alive is VHS tapes that were filmed by the CIA in the 90s. You'd think Bin Laden would have got an HD digital camera by 2006, You'd think, right? But he's still on old VHS 4x3. So it didn't take a genius. You don't need a crystal ball to work this stuff out. You just need to kind of know history, okay? It's kind of typical. And this is the outcome, okay? The war on terror, all these boogeymen, this is what we get. This is JTAC, okay? This comes from from the Home Office. In America, we've got another one, but the graph goes like this. It's a different graph, but it's the same thing. So you're walking through an airport, and threat level is substantial today. Just keep an eye out for anything looks suspicious. And you laugh when you go through American airports and you hear this over the PA. There's an elevated threat level today. Any suspicious packages or bags, please report them, or any suspicious behavior. That happens regularly, and I just laugh when I go through the airports and I hear this, but a lot of people take it seriously. Less and less. I think even the people who bought the war on terror, hook, line, and sinker, are eventually working out that it's not really what it appeared to be. But this is policy. All these things have a policy at the end. And here it is, policy. And essentially what we're talking about is that. That's a bad guy. Kim Jong-il, he's wants to take over the world. He wants to fire nuclear missiles at everybody. So we have to take out North Korea. This is the psychology. This is the level of psychology that we've been reduced to as adults in 2012, to buy that level of psychology. That's what they've reduced 50% of the U.S. population to, and half the Guardian readers, maybe 80% in this country, and every Sun reader and News of the World reader, they're on that level right there. Team America. That's where we're at for a lot of people. So it's up to, the people who do know what's going on to wake up your work colleagues, your friends, your family, anybody you can, because there is a tipping point. Scientifically, there's supposed to be about 10% of society wakes up, and the rest just end up flipping. So we still have a ways to go to get off of this, which is... And this is the goal. It's called the Arc of Conflict. And the reason you have anarchy in Syria and Libya and Iraq, and the list goes on, in Afghanistan, is because it's profitable, because they need a reason to be there, okay? The IMF needs a reason to do restructuring loans, because to restructure the country, you need to destroy it. And how do you destroy it? Well, this is the best way, so far, okay? So that's the global chessboard. Okay, this is the most important bit. We are the media. Right now, you can gather information, publish it, broadcast it. You can do that. I use free software on WordPress, 2009. I have the same site today, free hosting. I learned to make film on Microsoft Movie Maker, which is on everyone's PC. It's preloaded on Microsoft. That's how I learned. I use other software now, but I made some pretty damn good films with the free stuff. And YouTube's free at the moment. So the key is at the moment. That's your total cost to have the 25,000th most popular site in Britain is zero.
I have a promissory note for that.
Yeah. That's your cost. So dig deep, because that's what you need to do to be your own media. It's your time. It's just going to cost you your time. It doesn't cost you any money. The only thing I paid for was the domain of my website. That's it. Everything else was on my back. Okay? And this guy, I just want to give you an example. This guy called me up. Does anybody know this guy, Morris? This guy is one of the most hit YouTube channels. He's a retired guy from North London who has a camera and a moped. and he goes around and he contacts people in Banalaweed in Libya recently. He's doing all the on-the-ground intelligence about what's really going on in Syria. In Syrian Girl, that YouTube phenomenon was because of him. He contacted her via Facebook, and she became an internet star. Morris, who has no filming technique, is horrible to watch. He's shaking, he's coming in and out. But I love this guy. There's something about, he's so honest and so on it. If you had alternative media in the dictionary, 108 Morris is the definition. And his popularity, the amount of hits he's got, I don't know, millions and millions of hits, is incredible. And the guy has clearly no professional training, but he gets the traffic because he's really clued up on what's going on. He knows how to ask the right questions, and he knows how to sniff out people who can give the right answers. And it just boils down to that. That's what the mainstream media should be doing, but they're not. So Morris is doing it. So I would love to see 1,000 Morris channels online, and I'd pretty much be able to know everything that's going on accurately. So check him out. I'm a big fan. Okay, a lot of you heard of Tony Robbins, very American, comes in how to make $1 million, property, this and that. He's very charismatic. I'm going to save you £1,000, which is what he charges for his introductory course. You save 1,000 quid. You want to be successful and get motivated, it's up to you. That's it. It's up to you. And all you need to do is follow these 4 steps and abide by these 4 rules, which is you got to love what you do. You have to do what you love. Okay? Next thing, you have to actually be good at it or effective. Morris is not good at filming, but he's effective. Okay, Tony Robbins, in a nutshell, do what you love what you do. You got to be good at it. Morris is not a good filmmaker, but he's very effective. So he wins, okay? Lacks of skill, but he's got the content. So he wins online. You get the viewers. And you have to stick with it. To really excel at something or to achieve something, you have to stick with it, even when you think that it's not going so well. But if you love it, and you think you're getting better at it, then stick with it if you really want to go the distance. And I can say, from a personal perspective, I didn't know how to write very well. I taught myself how to write in this journalistic way. I could not speak in front of a camera 5 years ago, but I did some things to get better at it, and I stuck with it. And I've had some success the last couple of years just out of perseverance. There's a lot of people who are better, more knowledgeable, but I just stuck with it. And your website can get massive traffic, or your YouTube channel can get really good traffic if you're committed and you've got something to say and you love saying it and you stick with it. Eventually you'll get there. Yeah. And don't worry about what people think. Big handicap. As soon as you're weighed down by that, you're going to have a lot of problems moving forward. Forget about what the neighbors think. Forget about, you might have a PA system on your bicycle and pedal around town and, And if that guy worried about what people thought, we'd be deprived of one of the best things in Portsmouth. So that's a lesson right there. And there's a 100% success rate with this formula, by the way. It's one of these equations that doesn't fail. Because if you don't like doing what you're doing, you're going to quit anyway, so you're not in the 100% success rate. You'll move on and do something else. So if you found something that you love doing, stick with it. And this is where you can see some of our stuff. Russia Today, 21st Century Wire, Paradimn Shift TV. We got a great show every week at 6. UK Column Live. The guys from Plymouth. That's the best alternative newspaper probably in the country. They just got banned from Eurosat, from Eutelsat. The EU has banned Press TV because of Iranian sanctions. Press TV has nothing to do with the Iranian government, other than they're partly funded by it. They're totally independent. Their producers don't even speak to the government in Tehran. Okay, so that's a big crime. And if you allow that to go by without a fight, then the next thing is that one gets banned, and then this one gets banned, and then we'll ban that and shut that down. That's how it works. So this is a big domino that just fell this week. Sky kicked them off for no reason, for a stupid Ofcom issue, Press TV. They do some great programs, okay? That's our website. That's our YouTube channel. I've got Brian Garish up next, but I'm going to show you a film clip and then take a couple questions. Let me just say this is something that really happened recently. The housing associations are being privatized in this country. The councils have privatized council housing and made it, and there's things like the TMO, Tenant Management Organization. So I just wanted to put it on a local level. I know we talked about geopolitics and everything, but I just want to show you this. This is really happening. People are getting thrown out of their flats for no reason, and those flats are being resold. And this is happening on a mass scale right now. And these are usually low-income people with health problems, elderly, pensioners, or widowers, something like that. Over the last 20 years, a slow transition is taking place from state and government bodies towards privatized government agencies, handling everything from public services to housing. Now, this story in particular is one of the most shocking we've come across recently. One of the local residents, Umberto Silvestri, has been forcibly evicted from his home and beaten up by the police in the process. And we have it on film. Take a look at this footage.
Have you got an order for me? Can you pass me the order, please? Can you please pass the order? Have you got an order for me? Can you show it to me, please, through the letterbox? I'm afraid I can't help you there. No, you cannot force it. You don't have my consent to do that. You don't have authority or consent to do that.
No, don't open.
Don't open it, for goodness sake.
Oh! Hey, you just slapped me!
Oh my God!
I've got you all on camera.
That's fine.
No, that's not fun. You just hurt him.
Oh my
How
God!
dare you? How dare you?
That's a lot of aggression.
That's how.
For the residents of this borough, Kensington and Chelsea, if they ever have a serious problem or there's an unpaid bill, and for whatever reason they might have missed a court date. In the case of Umberto Silvestri, he had a heart attack. The ramifications of missing your court date due to a medical incident could be devastating.
I need to get my medicine. I'm on an heart attack. Get away from me. I'm touching my penis. Don't touch me.
You're disgusting. This is disgusting. Oh my God, my kids have to look up to this. This is the police.
Yeah, I have to take these. They pushed me down on the floor, two of them grabbed me while I was moving away, and I wasn't expecting it, and that's why I fell down. They just, they were keeping me away from re-entering the premises. Yes, that's what they were doing. That was their service.
That's a really important film that I think if you have a chance to let people see it, to know that that's happening in a lot of boroughs around the country. And that is the corporate state, okay? They make up law as they go along. They're just making it up. It's corporate policy. It's not law. and they're using that on the spot, on the fly, to pull people out of their houses. I just got a call from a guy who has a $30 million company that they changed the law on warranties because Guy wanted his business, and they just took it. They changed the rules. They shut him down. They bankrupted him. The judge used to work for Sky on the trial, took his company. 350 employees out of work like that. So that's the corporate state. It's happening. It's not just happening on that big level. It's happening on a local level. And people need to get really wise up to the fact that it's happening and get in their face and say, no, we're not going to accept this. They treat this guy, this is how everyone will be treated if you allow this current PPP or whatever you want to call it, where corporations are not accountable. Okay, he can't do anything if he can't sue them, or he could sue them or get some personal injury thing, but is he going to be able to beat a company in court that's capitalized, £100 million company? That guy? I don't think so. And so the important thing is be aware of it now, and then we need to find ways to organize and to push back against it on a local level. It doesn't have to happen nationally. It'll happen on its own, but it's happening in your neighborhood, and you need to stand up for people like that, or pensioner. You know, Gilad Atzmon is an amazing saxophonist. I'm going to leave you with this. I asked him about Palestine, because that was a big issue for me about 10 years ago. And I said, what about Palestine? And he just shook his head. He's all, Patrick, you know, he's all, Palestine, I gave up on Palestine. And I was like, mortified. You know, I thought Gilad Atzmon was going to tell me some truth about Palestine justice. He's all, I gave up on Palestine because after living in Britain for the last 20 years and seeing how people just allow their neighbors to be beaten, thrown out, and not paying enough council tax, and evicted, and you know, abused by the system. He's all, if we can't stand up for our own neighbor, how do we expect to get any justice for a Palestinian 3,000 miles away? It's a joke. We need to get our house in order first, and then we can export those ethics and values. But you can't allow your neighbor to be beaten and marginalized and people to be abused by a system that's clearly merciless in its nature and expect to get any justice farther afield. Okay, so that's a big thing that hit me like a ton of bricks when he told me that. And then when I saw that, then this happened the week after that. So I'm really seeing this clearly right now, because it's not theoretical anymore, it's real. So, yeah, I've got time for a couple questions. How are we doing on time, Jane? I got time for a couple questions. That's it. Thanks. And do check out stuff. So if you got any questions, anybody? This is on YouTube. It's on 21st Century Wire TV. And it's been on the UK column, and it's on the UK column's website as well. So it's in a couple places. By all means, if you see something on YouTube that you like, that you think might get erased by YouTube, what you do is rip it down off YouTube and then upload it to your own channel. And that way you get this mirror effect all over the web. And that's, if you see anything that you think, wow, this is really key information, pull it down off YouTube, free software you can download to do that, and upload it to your own channel. And that's how you beat the censors, if everybody does that. So, yeah. Any other questions, anybody? Yeah, she's talking about the Navy SEAL Team 6 that supposedly killed bin Laden. Some of the members of that group were, in fact, killed in a mysterious helicopter accident shortly after. You can speculate as to what happened there, but there's a pattern that we see reoccurring a lot of time. The eraser of the closing the book on the operation. That's what they did with Abu Hamza and Aswat. 2 weeks ago, they extradited him to the U.S. That was That was your government, our government, closing the book on those informants, offshoring the problem because they couldn't convict them in a British court because they would have to come out that they were informants. And that can't happen here. So they sent him off to America and did a deal under the table. And they sent a couple of other guys. Gary McKinnon, lucky he didn't get extradited to the U.S. He's here and he's okay. Yeah, they closed the book on that operation. The Bin Laden death was closing the book on the war on terror in terms of that part of the narrative. And they've now rebranded Al-Qaeda and doing new things with that idea. Yeah.
Yeah. The man that lost his business, was he in debt or something? Why did
they took what they did was his company gave warranties to people who had Sky, and the FSA came along one day after they'd been trading for 20 years and said, that warranty is actually insurance, so you're in violation of FSA. They just created a law there and said you're in violation of FSA. So we froze their accounts. Sky put a gagging order on anyone in the business for 2 years to talk about it. The only reason I found out because the gagging order expired last week. So this guy called me and because he saw their show on Edge TV. Yeah, it's happening every day. Watch Max Kaiser on Russia Today, and he's on this subject massively. This is fraud from A to Z. FSA, what are they? I don't even know if they're a government agency anymore. They could be privatized and just masquerading as the FSA. That's that's the world we're living in. Okay, so yeah.
I've got a question. Is Max Kaiser as passionate in real life as he is on InfoWars?
He's when Max is performing, he's full blast, but he's actually one of the most chilled out guys. Yeah, when he's off camera, he's really chilled out. Yeah, he's a nice, really amazing guy. Yeah.
Thank you. Can I ask one question? Sorry.
Like his
sorry.
passion.
Was it Lockerbie, the Americans closing the book on people who could reveal what was really going on?
Yeah, Lockerbie is really interesting because if you look at what happened in Libya last year, that was really set up by Lockerbie in terms of the public's perception of Libya or Gaddafi being involved as a terrorist or a demon. That was a long-term plan. But Lockerbie, there was a lot of interesting stuff in that trial that has connected to other things. Some of the passengers on that plane, and also there's a lot of I don't know that case in and out, but I know that Megrahi wasn't a bomber, and I know that there's more to it. And there was a massive cover-up by the police during the investigation. Evidence was withheld during that trial, so clearly that was not justice served. But what that judgment did was move the narrative forward that Arabs are terrorists. Okay, and again, that's a mythology. We have mythologies. You know, the Greeks had mythology. They had mythologies in the Middle Ages. The pagans had mythology. We also have our mythologies. You know, Hades is Bin Laden. Zeus is Obama. You know, that's our modern mythology. Global warming is a mythology. Climate change. It's like we've been bad, so the gods are punishing us. It's the same. It's the same thing. People have a thirst. Some people for mythologies. They need that to run their lives. They don't feel they have a place in the world without a mythology. So yes, Lockerbie, very pivotal event, and it's a shame how it's not really been done justice yet. And there's probably a lot of, they probably extended the Freedom of Information request on that trial another 50 years until they'll be able to open it. So, yeah.
One quick one.
Yeah, sure.
Is Alex Jones really a good guy?
You know what? I don't know. I don't know him that well outside of a work capacity. So
I used to subscribe and I watched him for years. I hated screaming, but I thought he was a good guy, and I'm not so sure.
It would be like if you work in a company. I would say you work at some company, and I know the CEO. Is he a good guy? I don't know. You know people from work, and Alex is a hard-working guy. He's been very successful.
Who's he working for?
Probably, I think he's working for himself. Actually, it's a family business. Yeah. So, but yeah, he's been very successful, and people don't agree with everything he says or the way he says it, but he seems to be pretty effective. And I think it takes a lot of different strands in the tapestry. David Icke is very different from Alex Jones, but yet David Icke can reach a certain amount of people because of the way he delivers, and he's quite a good speaker. Yeah, Alex Jones delivers a certain way, and he resonates with certain people. I have a different way of delivery. I resonate with a totally different set of people. So I think it takes all strands in the tapestry. That's why I want to see more, like, more YouTube people, more websites coming up, because a lot of people have an interesting spin that they can put on something that other people can't do, because it's like music or writing. Everyone's different. Everyone's got a different take.
It's not, I understand what you're saying. It's not so much the way he says things, although that can obviously really put people off. Is he trying to incite hatred and division?
I don't know. I think it's a question of style. It's like if you listen to punk rock, you listen to lyrics of punk rock songs of the Sex Pistols. It sounds like they want to burn the city down and steal your daughters. But it really it's a different style of music, and it's the same thing with a radio host. Or I don't think Alex is inciting hatred. I think that's a bit far. But I think he's excited. He's a very excited guy, and he's flamboyant. And it takes a few flamboyant people in the media to wake people up, unfortunately, because most of us are walking dead half the time because we're working 50 hours a week, and we're behind on our bills. So it's tough. Yeah. So I can't really criticize Alex Jones because he's been very successful. I would like to have a quarter or a hundredth of the success he's had in the amount of people he's reached, and he's made some great films.
15 years of waking people up.
Yeah. So, but I mean, would I do everything the way he does, or do I agree with him on everything? No, not at all.
No, but there has been some very negative, and I can't find any fault with some of the stuff that's out there, criticising him in the way that he's dealt with people. And
well, interestingly enough, it was one of his former employees that went after him recently, which I find funny because no one would know who that guy was if it wasn't for Alex Jones. So it's a bit like biting your hand off or whatever. I don't know. So it's to me, those things aren't very productive, and they always end in a cycle of downward sort of cycle. Exactly. Divide and rule. You got it. Yeah.
There's a lot of information. I've been watching him for years, and I got some really bad information and thought, my God, is this guy actually, one of the good guys or not?
I'd like to say something. I've got evidence, just so everybody knows this, that the FSA have been hiring agents who they authorise as licensed deposit takers, where they collect innocent people's monies in scams that are organised at the highest levels. On behalf of the banks, the FSA then freezes those monies, and mysteriously all the forensic records and bank statements disappear, and they get concealed. And this has happened, this pattern has been repeated several times, and now the Treasury is disbanding the FSA and renaming them the FCA.
Okay.
But the problem is, it's the same circus, different months.
I'm working on this story, and I'd like to get your contact details to exchange information on this, because it's really important.
First-hand evidence.
Yeah.
7 years.
Take your time. There's no ban. It's been cancelled.
Okay. You're talking about the FSA. The other one is Capita Limited. Capita Limited, under the umbrella of Deutsche Bank. Okay, so Capita is a private limited company. They have a license to operate on behalf of the BBC to collect television licenses. So when Capita comes to your door and asks you for £150 or whatever I've not paid my TV license ever, or I think I did 2 years, because my girlfriend accidentally answered the door one day and let him in. But Capita, not that there's anything worth watching on the BBC anyway, but Capita is a private limited company. The nature programs are excellent on the BBC. The nature, garden, Gardening, Antiques Roadshow is quality programming. You got it. Yeah, David Attenborough. Everything outside of gardening and nature and bees mating in midair or whatever, they're not really doing much good stuff. Yeah, no, it's worse. It's solicitation. It's illegal. That's a limited company, covert, exactly. And people need to really wake up to this and expose it as much as possible, because that's a limited company soliciting money from you on behalf of a third party, and who will threaten a jail sentence or a fine. So it's outrageous. Yeah.
I have to just say, I mean, the scam that I'm dealing with at the moment in the High Court of Appeal is so huge, and there isn't currently any legislation to prosecute criminal acts of bankers. How bad is that?
Well, it's all across the board. It's not just with that. It's now a different. There's an administrative, statutory courts, administrative courts, secret courts, corporate courts. It's a total evisceration of your constitutional society, which Brian is very well versed in. He'll be able to share a lot more than me on that subject. But just be aware, who are these agencies? You know the C charge in London. You know the C charge, congestion charge. I knew it was going to be £10. As soon as it arrived, and it said it was 5. I said it'll be 8, then it'll be 10. And the C charge, John Bird, Big Issue, founder of the Big Issue, ran for mayor last election. I think it was against Boris Johnson. He didn't do very well, but he got a lot of votes. And I met him in a cafe by accident in Fulham, I think. And we're talking about the C charge, and he's all, do you know what? He's all, I was doing my research for the campaign because we had a debate, and I found out that Capita skimmed 70% of the C charge off. That's their deal. They hit the billion mark by 2004, I think, but that's their operating costs for their contract. So it's not going for the environment, or it's not going for this or that, or the kids in the schools. No, it's going to a private company that probably has offshore holdings, and there's your C charge. That's your C charge right there. It's nothing to do with congestion.
This is the model they're using all over the country. Bournemouth Council, everybody, is owned by Michel, a French company, and it's a private company. Mm-hmm. And that is the truth. And if you look, I bet every county council has the same. Same, yeah.
It's been done right under your nose. Very, very quietly, but the signage will say whatever your council is, whatever your borough is, it will say there, like TMO, Kensington, Chelsea, or Lambeth, where I live, but it's not. It's not. And it's costing a fortune, and they got all the ironclad pensions that go along with that, and so forth. And they're taking your money and they're gambling it on hedge funds, and they lost loads of money in Iceland, loads of councils. They're speculating. They speculate with your fees, your rubbish fees.
Creating fake surveillance to
Yeah.
terrorize people in their homes.
Yeah. You should be doing one of these. Hold on, I've got this gentleman here. 1 second.
Just to finalise, since we're on the subject of geopolitics and what's happened to this gentleman here, and then you alluded to what's happening with the Palestinians. Hamas, I think this movement here can learn a lot from Hamas in the sense that it's socio-political sub-state. It's essentially a state within a state. Mm-hmm. So it's cut loose from the monstrosity, which is the state, and it's doing its own thing. And people, what is that but what the British Constitution wants to do? Cutting loose of this monstrosity. You want your own government. Take it, we're going to do our own thing, which is what Hamas have done. Of course, I'm not advocating guns.
No, well, I agree with you in principle. In principle, I agree with you. Practically, Gaza, where Hamas is based, is under military occupation, and it's one of the it's a horrific place. But in principle, you're right. That's a better solution, is what you're saying. But you know. Practically, the reason Hamas has been able to do that is because it has been so lousy there, and that we might reach a point in our society exactly where you need to do that kind of a radical shift and say, okay, we don't need central planning. We have to plan locally. Yeah, and that's a positive thing. It's a positive theme, I think, overall. Yeah, but Hamas was also historically started by Israeli intelligence in 1976 to provide as a counterweight to the PLO, who was gaining too much influence. Okay, so that's a whole other subject, but that had nothing to do with what you said. You're talking about the principle of community. Yeah, like screw central planning. We're going to do it locally, which I think is a smart thing to do economically, politically. People who don't go out to vote, you're missing a big opportunity because you don't have to vote for any of the candidates on the ballot. You can just put a big X there, and they have to count that. Spoil the ballot. Yeah. Because if you don't participate, even putting that X on the thing, if you don't participate, the establishment takes that as implied consent, that you consent to what they're doing and they're just going to go ahead and do it, steamroll you because you didn't show up to vote. But if 60% of the people in this country spoiled their ballots, you know.
If you register, they also misuse the electoral roll against you.
Well, that's a side issue. That's a side issue. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a mandate, and which is a carry on from what this gentleman was saying, which is that things that the community can do to be noticed. For one, they have to acknowledge that your discontent is real, and one of the ways you can do that is to vote. None of the above. That's a separate thing for another day.
Okay, thank you.